Today we are going to rank every book I read this year. Let's get into it. Hola mi gente, MsMalcolmHughes here. Welcome back. I can't believe it's that time of year again to tell you all the best books that I read this year. So in total, I read 29 books this year, and we are going to rank every single one of them. I'm actually very pleased to say that though I had my rank of read now, read when you have time, and read if you want, none of the books I read this year fell into the read if you want category. So this has been a pretty solid reading year for me. And I'm also just like very proud of myself. You know, as content creators, we sometimes are very hard on ourselves. Like, I should be doing more, I should be reading more. But I read a good number of books, and I'm excited to come and talk about all of them with you all today. So we are going to do a complete ranking of all of them. So even though none of the books fell into the read if you want category, some of them did still fall into the lowest tier category, and we're gonna start with those. So the way this works is I'm gonna tell you where I originally ranked it and then why it's here. So as you can see on the screen, at the D level, the worst level, we have two books. The first one is The Prada Plan by Ashley Antoinette. And this won't be a review of the book. I have videos for all of these, so definitely check them out. So when I originally reviewed this book, I ranked it read when you have time. And the reason why it's here in the D category is, one, obviously because I read books that I felt were better and impacted me more. But this one, I just felt like it was a lot of unnecessary violence and trauma. And when I think back to just the books that I read this year, it's just not one of the best. After that, we have Birds in the Sky by Ashley Antoinette, which also is down here in D status. And this was also a read when you have time book. So again, I didn't hate it, but I very much thought that the story was sometimes repetitive, and the love and romance in particular, very immature, and I just wanted something different. But again, didn't hate it and did not recommend that you all read it. But these are the two lowest ranked books that I read this year. Next up, we have C tier. We have quite a number here. Let's talk about why they're here. You know, it seems like I'm picking on Ashley Antoinette, but I'm not. I actually read a lot of her books this year, and you'll see them in different places across the ranks. All right, so for C tier, these aren't the worst books I've read this year. They were cool. C is for cool. And so the first one we have is Moth to a Flame by Ashley Antoinette. And this was another read when you have time. I thought that this book is important because it lays the foundation for the series that we know and love, which are Ethic and the Butterfly series, and will hopefully eventually be the Bloom series. But it was cool. She wrote this book a very long time ago, and it was just okay. You could tell she's grown a lot as a writer. Obviously, it lays the foundation. I think of it as the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter series. It lays that foundation, so it's important, but not the best work. Next up, we have Love Radio by Ebony Liddell. And this one, I remember thinking that it was cute. It was like a fun time read, but I thought that it was most appropriate for like young adults, young teenagers. And it was cute, but it didn't really like stick with me. So that's why it's here as cool. All right, after that, we have Butterfly 5 by Ashley Antoinette. If you watch my review, you know I was not feeling Butterfly 5. I felt as if she dedicated entirely too much time to Ethic and Alani, and it just wasn't my favorite book in the series. This was also supposed to be the last book in the series, but of course, she informed us that there would be a book 6, so it was cool. Another book here in the C tier is The Perfect Find by Tia Williams. So I thought this book was good. This is only the second book that I've read from Tia Williams. I just thought that the other work I read from her was much better. This one was okay. This one was written earlier. You can just, you know, the progression of authors. It was just an earlier work, and it was written by an earlier pen. And it didn't stick with me. It was like, cool. So that's why it's here. So far, all of these are halftime reads. Same thing with the next one, Friday Black by Nana Brenya. This one is a short stories work. I did recommend it in one of my short stories videos. because I do think it has some value therein, of course, but overall as a collection, it was cool. Some stories were superior to others. It's not the best short story collection I've ever read. It didn't really stick with me, so it was just cool. So that's why it's here. Next up, we have When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. Another when you have time read, and I did think this one was pretty good. I enjoyed it for the most part. I did think it was slow in some places, but it was really the ending that kind of like demoted it for me a bit. And so overall, though I think this covering an important topic, it was just cool. All right, next we have a book that I reviewed recently, which was Just As I Am by Elin Harris. It's the second book in the Invisible Life trilogy. And again, I think the topic is very important. A lot of what he covers dealing with folks figuring out their sexuality, how they want to be in the world. At that time, also talking about the AIDS epidemic. So I thought very appropriate topics. But again, the pacing sometimes is a little slow. The writing sometimes, he uses like some jargon that places it at a certain period of time that doesn't always translate. And I just, yeah, it was cool. Even though I enjoyed it, and I'm going to read the third book in that trilogy, it didn't stick with me. It's not my favorite, so it was just cool. And then the last book in the C tier is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. Another read when you have time book. And this one, you know, as someone who is a big fan of the Hunger Games and I'm considering rereading them, though this one was good and I love that it's a prequel that gives us the backstory of President Snow and lets us know more about Panem after the war and how the Hunger Games came to be what we know. It was just okay. Like, I enjoyed it. I would not recommend that anyone read it, but it didn't hit the way that the other works did. So for me, it's here at C tier. All right, so we're moving on up, moving up and up, getting closer and closer. Next we have B tier, and B tier is good, right? B tier is like, these books were solid. They were good. I enjoyed them. That's what we get at B tier. And so the first one we have is Yinka, Where Is Your Husband by Lizzie Blackburn. And I actually gave this one a read now. I remember really appreciating the journey that Yinka was on, the struggle of like getting older and finding someone to marry, especially when her family is on her case about it. And just her progress of accepting herself, her weight, her skin color, her hair, all of that, and I appreciated that journey. And so I thought it was a really good book, and I like Yinka's evolution, so that's why it's right here at B tier. We also have some books from the Ethics series. Unfortunately, not all books in the series are created equally, so we have books 1, 2, 4, and 5 of the Ethics series right here. Those are some really solid ones, and I enjoyed them. You know, overall, I love the Ethics series, but these were solid, right? These were good. None of the books in the Ethics series are bad to me. So that's what we get here, really, really solid efforts. And then we also have Christmas with the Okafers by Ashley M. Tonette. And also for Ethic Book 1, I gave it a read when you have time. Book 2 was also a read when you have time. Ethic Book 4 was also a read when you have time. And Ethic Book 5 was a read when you have time. So that's why they are there in the good. They were solid, they were good. Next up, we have Christmas with the Okafers by Ashley Antoinette. I gave that a read now. I love that story. You've heard me complain that Easy needs more of a storyline. He got a little bit more of that there. We really focus on Easy a bit more and his importance in the family. And I really enjoyed that one. It was short, no one was anticipating it, and it was like a treat to us, and it was a treat to read. So that's why that's there, really solid effort again. Next up, we have Butterfly 3 by Ashley Antoinette. Putting this list together just made me realize how many Ashley Antoinette books I read this year. She consumed a lot of my time. But Butterfly 3, again, really solid effort. Like I said, not all books in a series are created equally, but I did think Butterfly 3 was solid. It propelled the story forward, but not my favorite. So again, B tier. Then we have Black Candle Women, and that's written by Diane Brown. I rated that as a read when you have time. I enjoyed it. It was 3 generations of women really coming to terms with family trauma and the magic that they possess and what does that mean, and closing old wounds and moving forward. So I greatly enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I didn't have super high hopes, but just the idea of it just seemed super magical to me. And though it didn't hit all the boxes for me, it didn't tick all of them for me, I did still really enjoy it. I thought it was a really solid piece of writing, and so that's why it's here in B tier. And last but not least in B tier is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And I remember raving about this. I actually ranked it as a read now, so when you watch my review, if you haven't already, I spoke very highly of this work, and I actually went into this thinking that it would be placed higher on my list. But when I really thought about it, though I loved it, though I still recommend everyone read it, it is really more of a book where you sit and intellectualize and reflect and ponder on these lessons that are being shared. But though I loved it while reading, it hasn't really stuck with me in the way that I imagined. It was very impactful when I was reading it, but having finished it, I've kind of set it aside and I haven't thought about it much anymore. And that doesn't happen with books that like I love. So that's why it ended up being here in B tier. B tier, still solid, still good, but it couldn't get up to those two highest levels, unfortunately. But yeah, these are the books that I have here at B tier. We're now gonna move on to A level, and A level books are like, that was a darn good book. It stuck with me, I felt it, I think about those characters. That's what we get with A tier. Like, you did some good writing therein. And so the first one we have is Ethic Book 3 by Ashley Antoinette. Ethic Book 3 was definitely a read now for me. I love that one. I love getting to know more about Ethic. At that time I was really, you know, I was feeling Ethic and Alani, and so we got to see more of that evolution and that growth. I enjoyed the writing. It was well paced, the story was captivating, and so Ethic Book 3 is one of my favorites from that series, and that's why it's here at A level. Next up we have Ethic Book 6 by Ashley Antoinette. Again, another read now. And you know, some people hated this one, but listen, I always want to know more about Ethic. Why is he the way that he is? What is that background? We learn more about the pain, what caused it to be that. And I love the ending for Ethic and Alani. I really did. And so for me, it was A level. That was some good writing. So even though it was supposed to be 5 books, it made it to 6. I wasn't mad at the way it all came together. All right, so next up we have Butterfly 1 and Butterfly 2, both by Ashley Antoinette. Butterfly 1 was a read now. Butterfly 2 was also a read now. And so for me, these were so great coming out the gate. We got to know so much more about the crew, the gang, the individuals that I was always most invested in from the Ethic series. So for me, oh, these were just divine to really like have the chance to learn more about these characters, really explore with Morgan as she grows and evolves, and Morgan's men, as I always say. And we still got updates on the rest of the family as well. And so these were very compelling. The stories were well paced, on the edge of your seat. They took like kind of a left turn, things you didn't see. Well, they were like hints in Ethic, but they came to be like fully developed in the Butterfly series, and they were so good. So book 1 and 2 are here at A tier for me. We also have The Invitation by Ashley Antoinette here at A tier. Another read now that I ranked it at that time. Again, just great storytelling. Another book that we didn't anticipate, but we got to know so much more about the family and the challenges they were facing. And I thought that it was a short but very pleasant read, and I really enjoyed it. So that's why it's here at A tier. Next up we have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I also ranked this as a read now, and I remember really enjoying this book. I think one of the things I really loved about it is that I had put off and delayed reading this book for so long because I was scared that it was going to be like trauma porn and unnecessary pain, and it wasn't. She told such a good story. Everything that was in it was like well paced. The pain therein was there, but we really got to focus on this young woman trying to come to terms with all of it, and the pains of a neighborhood trying to heal and grapple with what has happened and what the future will be. So a very important topic, very timely. I really enjoyed it, and that's why it's here at A tier. All right, our last book at A tier is Butterfly 4 by Ashley Antoinette. Another read now. And Butterfly 4, oh, it was such a good one. It left on such a cliffhanger, why I think Butterfly 5 was so disappointing. But Butterfly 4 was solid. We got to know so much more information. Certain things that you really wanted to happen and be dealt with, those bows were tied for the most part. But you could see where the story was going. And you felt like our characters were really growing and developing. And so it was good to see that here. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was further proof of the strength of Ashley Antoinette's pen and how she was just growing and evolving as a writer with this series. And so I really enjoyed it. And that's why it's here at A tier. So that's the last book in A tier. These are some good reads books of the year. Now we're going to S tier. These are the superstars of the year. These are the books that blew me away. These are the books that stick with me. These are the books that I can't recommend enough. These are the books that I wish I could read them again for the first time. And I didn't anticipate that these would be the top ones, which is so interesting. You go to ranking and thinking back on books and watching your overviews to remember what you loved, and you never know how it'll shape up. So these are my top books of the year, top reads of 2023. First up, we have Open Water by Caleb Nelson. I rated this as a read now. If you watch my review, I raved about the beauty of the writing, the storytelling, how compelling it was. I also talked about how when I first tried to read this book, I couldn't get into it. I came back to it months later and it blew me away. And that's the beauty of art and literature. Sometimes something comes to you and it may not be time, and then you circle back around to it later and it's necessary and what you need during that period of time. And so Open Water for me was like a healing and a balm, trying to go through this journey with these characters. Our main character, trying to understand what's happening romantically with this woman who has had such a major impact on him, but the way in which they met is sketchy. Him trying to grapple with who he wants to be in the world, and especially in connection to his elders and family, especially his parents. So definitely worthwhile, definitely worth checking out. The next one we have at Superstar S tier is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Kweke Emezi. Another read now. And this one was controversial for a lot of people. A lot of people did not like this book, but for me, it was so good. I enjoyed it from the opening line all the way through. I loved how they dealt with the grief and pain. I loved how messy the romances were, because they can be messy in real life, and I loved the depiction here, and I appreciated it. I know it kind of played on a trope and a lot of people were upset about that, but I thought that it was natural and it felt appropriate, and I could understand how they ended up together and it made sense to me. And I remember in my review I said how I read the last line of the book, and I remember thinking this would be an amazing last line. And then I turned the page and that was the last line of the book, and oh, I cried. It was so good. From the first line to the last line, I rock with this book heavy. And so that's why it is here at S tier. And last but never ever least, an oldie but goodie, one that needs to be revisited. It is unsung. It does not get the credit it deserves, and that is The Street by Ann Petrie. Yes, top tier. I remember just talking about how this is a TED Talk in novel writing. She did that. I love the description. The story was compelling. You didn't really see the ending coming, and then you had to grapple with all that it meant. We went through so much with our main character, goodness gracious, and just how this book was written so long ago, but is still so relevant to modern times. And that is a classic. That's a book that you can pick up at any period of time, and it will speak to that time. It'll speak to the people, and that's what we have here with The Street. Can't recommend it enough. If you've never read it, please pick it up. Yes, I'm recommending it to you, but also just for yourself, your mental and your soul. It is a book that should be read by everyone, honestly and truly. But that's it, guys. Those are my top reads of 2023. Every book that I read this year has been ranked, so you see the tiers, but those three in S tier are the 3 best books that I read in 2023. So let me know if y'all have read these books below. Do you agree with my ranking? Do you disagree with my ranking? And what are the top books that y'all read this year? Maybe you read something that I'm not aware of and I might want to check it out and add it to the TBR for next year. But that's it for me. This will be my last video of 2023. I hope that everyone has an amazing, wonderful, prosperous new year, full of love, full of life, full of health, full of kindness, and full of genuine people around you, and just a genuine soul within yourself. So that's it. I'm out of here. As always, I am MsMalcolmHughes, one who believes that books are sometimes better than people. And until 2024, please remember to give time, to be kind to yourself, and to have the very best day of your life on purpose. 2023 was one for the books, and we're just ready to run it up next year. Take care, everybody. Peace. Odabo. Adios. Ciao.